A very good evening and welcome to this edition of the Fourth Estate. Charles Mwambu Shampagi. Been missing in action for the last 2 weeks, 2 Sundays. Happy to be back on air. And tonight we'll be looking at the state of the economy, not just for Uganda, but the economy within the East African region. The National Resistance Movement has just ended a week of accountability on what it promised coming into power again in 2016. How is it aligning? And of course, a huge debate about whether the country is still on track to achieve its target to hit lower middle income status by 2020. I have been wondering what the magic is about $1,038, what that means, and whether whose race are we actually running. We'll also be looking. President Uhuru Kenyatta announced in Kenya when he was re-elected that he has a Big Four plan. He's called it his Big Four. Critics are now saying his budget proposals for 2018-2019 don't seem to align with that objective, where he plans to create at least 1.3 million manufacturing jobs by 2022. Will he be on course? Which of the economies within the region? President John Pombe Magufuli is looking at a focus on infrastructure, an extreme focus on infrastructure to turn around the Tanzanian economy. Also be looking at what's happening elsewhere. We have a very small panel tonight, and of course my colleague Onapito Ekomloit, he's Legal and Corporate Affairs Director at Nile Breweries AB InBev, with major operations in Tanzania, few operations in Kenya, but having worked with the president before and having been in parliament before, he is in a good position. Ona, very nice to have you.
Good evening, Charles, and good evening, viewers.
We have from Siatini, the Southern and East African Trade and Trade Information
Negotiations
Institute, Siatini. We have Jane Nalunga, he's the country director for Uganda. And you've been operating, you're quite heavy within the East African region.
Yes.
That's your founding, but you operate
Yes.
a global function,
Yes.
a global organization.
Yes.
Very nice to have you, Jane.
Thank you so much, Charles, and good evening, viewers.
Let me start with you, Ona. Would have been nice to have government people, would have been nice to have Willis Bashasha tell us about what the NRM has done and what it hasn't done. I was watching on another TV show last Sunday, I think, my friend Rogers Mulindwa also outlining what the NRM has achieved so far on its manifesto, but we have listened. Sometimes you have 3-4 ministers making presentations at the Uganda Government Media Center on the achievements of the NRM. But to look at what the NRM has achieved over the last 1 year since it was re-elected, or it was sworn in again, or to look at what, without looking at the bigger picture, what this government promised, where it wants to go, the state and the health of the economy within the East African region, what's happening across the border in Kenya and Tanzania, would be to deny Ugandans a broader perspective to debate the state of the economy and how they feel it. You are in business.
Yes, Charles, yes and no. I think first of all it's unfair to the government people. I don't know whether they were invited on this one of the premier national current affairs shows. They are best placed to tell their story. The rest of us can at best scratch the surface, and I think inherently talking heads like us would always be critical of governments across the world. That's how we approach issues. So it would be fair if they were here, and if they can call in later, they should explain their story better.
So we should
I also definitely don't think that it's nice to discuss the bigger picture, and we are going to do it, but ultimately it's the small picture which matters. I mean, what matters to the Ugandan who is listening out there are purely Ugandan issues at the end of the day, bread and butter issues. They can hear stories of how East Africa either is doing badly or doing very well, but if my personal situation is not addressed, that's what matters to me. That's why ultimately the government explanation for what it has done or not done is, I believe, what the viewer would be most interested in, but we shall definitely try to
Jane, let me come to you quickly. The bigger picture, the small picture. You're talking about an integrated region. You're talking about a region that is pursuing trying to remove as many of the barriers as possible to trade, to movement of goods and services, to people movement. And you have big plans across the region. You had a referendum in Burundi the other day, supposed to give President Pierre Nkurunziza a lifeline that might keep him in power until 2034. You have a new government in Kenya, re-elected, but already looking at the next election. You have a government in Uganda that has promised to reach middle income status. You have in Tanzania a president who has turned almost everything upside down. For Ugandans to be able to position themselves in this changing region that has a lot of opportunity, do you look at the bigger picture or the smaller picture?
Thank you so much, Charles. I think the two go together. You know, it isn't either all, the bigger picture or the smaller picture, because the bigger picture will determine how the smaller picture look like. We are living in a globalized economy, and we need to compete within that economy. And for me, I think also we need to look at critically the East African region, because that's where we operate. Because from the domestic market, we go to the EAC market, and then we go to the bigger market, the Africa market, you know. So we need to look at that bigger picture and how we can be able to position ourselves to be able to compete, because trade is about competition. Then two, I think we need to have a say when we talk about also that smaller picture and the NRM manifesto. NRM has told us what they have done. And I think it's time for the Ugandan people also to say what is on the ground, because we are the consumers of those policies. Because if the Minister of Agriculture, for example, says, I have done ABCD, what is on the ground? So I think also, for me, it would have been better for somebody from government to be here, but they can call in, but I think we can be able to discuss where we are. So, maybe also on the bigger picture, we need to look at how we are operating, first as a region, you know, then as individually as Uganda within that region. Maybe if I can say something about the whole region, how we are operating. For 2018, for 2017, the performance as an economy, the East African economy, wasn't so bad by GDP, because we measure our economy by GDP, although I don't believe in GDP as...
What do you believe in? What do you think should be a better measure? What's the magic about a GDP per capita income for Uganda of $740 and the chase now, the run that is making everybody talk about the magic of $1,038?
Because you know, all those are statistics. Because statistics is almost like saying if this water is zero, you know, freezing, and this glass is also at 100% boiling, you put your foot here and another one here, you're okay, because it's 50, you know?
50-50. You have an average.
You have an average. And the statistics is like that. It gives an average. It doesn't give the deeper picture. GDP talks about goods and services sold, you know, in an economy. And per capita income is again, you know, it's again an average. So it doesn't bring out the actual status, the actual reality on the ground. For example, the inequality. Take an example of Uganda. There is a lot of inequality. The rich are growing richer, the poor are growing poorer. But when you do the average, we okay. So again, we need to find a better measure.
Is Uganda's situation any different from what is happening across the border?
It's a bit different. Maybe if we go back to the figures, because we can't go away from the figures. For 2017, the average was around 5.3 GDP for the whole for the whole region. Tanzania performed better because it was at 5.8. Rwanda performed also better. Kenya was also performing better, but Uganda performed badly, 2.3%. And when you look at the drivers within each economy, for example, Kenya, like you said, Uhuru is looking at manufacturing jobs of 1.3.
Yeah, he wants 1.3 million.
And I
jobs.
think he's a bit on track, because when you look at the figures for 2017 and you look at the intra-regional trade, Kenya is trading those light manufacturers within the region, and they are doing really well.
His target is to create at least support the creation of at least 1,000 SMEs by 2022. But I was reading an analysis, and they say that to achieve a target of creating 1.3 million jobs in the manufacturing sector alone, he needs to be able to create 706 jobs per day.
Oh.
Well, Charles,
yes.
I think also I want to bring it down to overview of the East African situation from the consumer point of view. That's government. What she's explaining is what governments claim. Right now, we people who are associated with fast-moving consumer goods, basically for things people consume every day. There is a general slowdown across the region in terms of demand. For example, a lot of ravages from heavy rains, floods, so there's been a lot of disruptions. So generally, I think there is a slowdown from, in terms of people's ability to consume. And I think in Uganda currently, people are in early stages of planting, and there's a tendency for people to consume only more after harvesting. That clearly shows you that there's a bigger income deficit in the households. Most of the households are still dependent on agriculture, and they mostly are able to consume sufficiently when they harvest and sell crops, which is a big challenge. It clearly shows that the state government status objectives of creating household income is still one of the biggest challenges, regardless of whether the GDP is high or low, until when the ordinary person is able to consume basic goods throughout the year, which of course would be the main driver of even the manufacturing jobs that Kenya is aiming at. There is no way you can create manufacturing jobs if there is no effective demand for goods that factories manufacture.
I see a very interesting statistic from Kenya. Kenya apparently uses or purchases or buys 30 million pairs of shoes per year. The target is Kenya should be able to produce at least 20 million pairs of shoes and import only 10 million pairs of shoes. Kenya is also apparently has the third largest herd of cattle on the African continent, but imports almost all the shoes that they wear. When you bring that down to Uganda, you'll find the statistics will be much more harrowing. But the bigger question would be, you're talking about planting season. I did read the Minister of Agriculture's presentation on how the agriculture sector is being supported, what it has achieved. Willis Bashasha, you referred to, was on Capital Gang on Saturday and trying to explain what has been achieved, and the other people, government people, talking about the achievements so far. The thing is, the agriculture you're talking about remains largely rain-fed, subsistence, using the handhole.
And
is that the thing that
from the government point of view, you see, Charles, the beauty in terms of understanding government's claims on agriculture, most of us, even the elite, we like to call ourselves telephone farmers. We try to do some kind of farming either. They are in cattle, growing maize here and there. So you clearly know when government has been in touch with you or never, you know. And I'm sure many of us rarely encounter government when you are doing your agriculture. So I think the claims on agriculture support is one of the most overstated, you know. Many farmers are doing it their own way, and that's one of the major challenges, that you don't have a synchronized production in the country in terms of standardization, because the interventions of government are largely, for lack of a better word, lip service, you know. How many farmers, I know you do some dairy cattle or whatever, when did you ever get a government?
I wish I was.
But you see, for me, I think that the biggest challenge facing the agriculture sector, because when you look at the statistics, almost 62 or 68% of Ugandans are in agriculture.
68%.
Okay, they are in agriculture. But when you look at the agriculture sector, like you said, it's subsistence, it's a rain-fed. That's why when the drought hits, the figures go down, you know. So we are at the mercy of the weather,
of the elements,
and like they say, when the poorer you are, the nearer nature you are, you know, nearer to God, because you have to pray for the rain and all that. And government had promised to put more money in irrigation, but when you look at the figures for water for production, it's not there. And for a long time we are going to continue looking at the fluctuation in our production depending on the weather. But I think the biggest challenge is the linkage, the lack of linkage between agriculture, industry or manufacturing and trade. Because agriculture is on its own. People produce, we eat, and we sell the rest within the region. The maize, we sell the grain, okay? The vegetables and fruits, we send them within the region or maybe to Europe raw. We don't add value. Unless we link agriculture to industry, we link it to trade, agriculture will continue, like these people who do telephone, just
telefarmers.
Telefarmers, and because even today, the young farmers are leaving agriculture because the moment there is a fluctuation in price, the young people leave, they sell the land.
I think Jen raises a fundamental question. I was speaking to a farmer this evening, preparing for the show, and he told me he grew tomatoes. He has, I think, about 15 crates lying in his store now. At the time he was growing, he told me he's indebted to those who sell acaricides, because he has a cattle farm on the side. He's indebted to those who sell pesticides for spraying his tomatoes, and he was going into he was expecting a price of, I think, between 120 to 140,000 per crate of tomatoes. Now traders are offering him 40,000 shillings, and he's looking at the tomatoes; they're ripening,
and he has to sell them.
He has to sell them.
Yes,
the cost can't even cover for him.
Of course.
My question is the situation different in other parts of the region? And if we're going to have, yes, we would have had Willis Basasha here to talk. We would have had maybe somebody from anyone else from the Manifesto Implementation Office, or from some government department that has a manifesto to defend operational wealth creation.
Or from opposition claiming to have a better solution.
Yes, to have a better solution. Does that answer the questions? Do those explanations, justifications, denials, claims, do they answer the common man's question like you put it? Look, do they help?
I think using
your farmer in Amuria,
your tomato farmer, that story is common. And really the challenge is, I think there's been no concrete effort to appreciate that the best organizer of any production is the market. So you need, first of all, to fix the market if you can. Theoretically, if you before you work on the raw material. Often farmers are encouraged that they should produce X, and indeed they respond. Sometimes the weather is favorable, like seems this year, and there's a bumper harvest, but the market crushes them, you know. So you find that it's only crops that have a stabilizing element by the market that tend to maintain a stable price. So we are told there was supposed to be a tomato processing plant somewhere
in Luwero.
I hope it's efficiently working, or it's about to efficiently work, because But I think even the idea of putting that factory there, while it was well intentioned, the marketing element was not taken care of. Where was the final product going? Is it tomato paste? Was there target consumption within Uganda in an organized way? Because a factory cannot produce 24/7 if it has no market. And that means it cannot demand for the raw material. So until when they understand those dynamics.
There's supposed to be one. I have seen the one in Soroti being showcased, the one for processing fruit.
With the fruit.
The images have been all over the place.
Yeah,
but
we are
you're talking
excited,
about
we hope it works.
synchronizing the market. And someone would ask...
Yeah, because even for that fruit factory, it must first of all establish, is there a juice shortage if the juice is the end product somewhere which we are going to fill? Or is there another juice processor who is demanding for pulp? And has he committed to take that pulp? Otherwise, if you don't solve that element, you may still produce the fruits and you will have nowhere to go.
Have uptake.
Yeah, so the lessons are there.
Jen had talked about the exportation of grain, and we're exporting this within the region. Tanzania, I think, had closed its market, its grain production, maize, to Kenya, because Kenya has been one of the more desperate for maize this season. But Tanzania was trying to protect its own population to make sure that it maintains
food.
But here in Uganda, you have Kenyan trucks driving all the way to Kagadi to pick maize. They used to stop in Busoga sub-region, but since they have been crossing Mubende, Kagadi, and...
I hope more of them will come for one reason or the other, because right now there seems to be an explosion of maize growing across wherever I've traveled. You're
still selling it as grain. Let's pick this up after a very short commercial break.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
I'm actually worried.
You're still watching The Fourth Estate, and we're discussing the state of the economy within the East African region, and we're asking the question, is the region focused in the right direction? Are they trying to answer the demands of the citizenry? I know there are many issues that we could have, we need to get into and debate more intensely. Of course, people are still excited by the Justice Catherine Wamgemerere's land probe. Whether that finds the right answers for us or not is a discussion we'll get into at some stage. But Amanzuru Leslie William is watching us, I believe, from Arua or from somewhere in West Nile, and he says Uganda is under dog economy. I don't know what that means in the East African community. Says our quality of education.
He's saying underdog.
Underdog, yes. Underdog, yes. Is an underdog economy. And he says, thank you, Ona, and apologies to you, Leslie. Is an underdog economy within the East African community. Our quality of education, high taxes, poor pay, docile labor force, poor market orientation, lack of innovation, and in the deep disconnection between the local citizens and the leadership in Uganda, a huge setback to our economy. Ona, I want to come back to you. You run operations in Tanzania. Your company runs operations in Tanzania. You run operations in Uganda. And you said uptake by the market is kind of slowing down. Your own projections.
First of all, I don't want NTV to charge my company for promotion.
Anyway, obviously that we have you to be here every Sunday and we don't pay you for it is enough. Is enough bill for your company to pay. Yes. Do you project that things will turn around? Which market is performing better between the Tanzanian market and the Ugandan market, for example? What are you picking from? Of course, you watch competition across the border in Kenya.
The dynamics are different, so I wouldn't really be comfortable comparing the two. And yeah, I think like economies go through cycles, and certainly judging from our industry, I'm sure there will be better days. It's not really a big slump, so it should be able to pick up.
And they say that when people have dropped everything else, at least they'll be able to pick their beer. So you remain in business.
Also, look, I think the basket of requirements for the Ugandan households have increased dramatically because of the power of consumerism that we are seeing. I mean, during the break, you see there's a lot of promotions. So the Ugandan household can, I mean, even the head of the household cannot have the luxury of choosing especially maybe something like our product entirely. School fees is coming and it's totally going through the roof. And there's a lot of things now. We are getting into true consumerism, and with inadequate income, certainly the pressure is going to increase on all items people consume. Shirts will have to, the collars will have to wear out, shoes will have to start seeing more days. So no product is safe in terms
I
of
thought
pressure.
the region should have moved away from that.
No,
But Jen,
no. But I just wanted, before Jane comes in, of course, I think Ugandans definitely are right to beat themselves up always, which is a test of a country that could always progress further. We should not be completely satisfied, and that's what makes people move to greater heights. But there are things that the NRM people can legitimately claim certainly to have done. We have had stories about our roads. Increasingly, you can see motorable roads in many parts of the countries. At least all the highways are increasingly becoming connected by the famous tarmac road, much as the quality in some places is debatable. And a lot of places are getting power connections, at least not for everyone. Many people are still coexisting with the power without having it.
Yeah, lines running over their heads without dropping.
But those who are able at least have the opportunity to connect power. So those are some of the drivers, because one, you need to get to a place faster, either as a person or as goods, and you need to ultimately process to add value, and if power is available, I guess it is going to be the engine for the economy to grow. But the biggest challenge is unemployment. I'm sure most of our viewers, the young ones, always get frustrated by discussions like this when they can't see any prospect of jobs. They are out of university, they are out of high school, and the situation is gloomy for them. There are no easy answers by both the private and public sector to the job issue.
Let them share with us their views, and for this particular show, because we're talking about the economy, like you said right at the beginning, looking at what an individual feels about this economy. We will be opening the phone line. The number will be on the screen shortly, so that people can share with us their views. Nteja Simwe is watching us and says, the answer to your question is no. For Uganda, this Operation Wealth Creation is a political hoax. They are giving seedlings to people who don't need them. I saw one who received a cow and sold it to the butchers on the same day. I don't see the relevance of Minister of Agriculture to a Ugandan farmer. That's and Nteja Simwe is a very, very strong supporter of the government, of the government in power in Uganda. So to have a view like that comes from, I think, somewhere very deep. Jen, let me come to you. One of the major things that has emerged as the East African economies prepare their budgets for 2018-2019, actually the budgets are out, the budget documents are out, Parliament is going through the process of approval. What you'll have in June, next month, is simply a presentation of a document that Parliament has already approved. One of the major concerns across the board, almost in the entire East African region, is the taxation regime that is being adopted. In Uganda particularly, there are still protests going on out there over taxes on mobile money. The structure of the taxation on mobile money, for example, which was seen as the biggest East African innovation that is changing a very large unbanked population, that is changing small transactions, but the governments are looking to this with a lot of special focus. I think the government of Uganda is also proposing to tax when you make a sell of sell equity in a company, that corporation tax. They're planning to improve it. To increase it. Kenya has also pushed out a fairly harsh tax regime. How do these impact? How do they propel or make the economy dysfunction?
Okay, the tax regime. When you look at the taxation in all the East African countries, but especially for Uganda, it goes back to what we are discussing here. The economy is contracting, the people are poor. You know, so government is looking for ways of where to get money. You remember even that debate on the Bible, whether the Bibles are going to be taxed or not. You know, so it shows that it's government is also in a tight corner. They don't want to tax the corporations a lot because they will discourage investors. So they are going into taxing mobile money, looking at the Bible and all that. But it's because...
the minister denied. He said that for as long as the NRM government is still in power, but no one will tax those
exactly.
who the Bible.
But the mere fact that it even came on the table for discussion is worrying, that government is looking for ways of where to tax. And because we also need to look at the whole issue of the push for domestic resource mobilization. Because ODA, Overseas Development Assistance, is going down. Europe, which used to give us a lot of money, it's going down. There is no money. Because they also need it in Europe. They need it because Europe has expanded to 7 countries. There are those former Balkan countries. They need money. So the aid situation is a bit complicated. So we have to look for funding internally, and
the Western Hemisphere hasn't fully recovered
from the financial
crisis from 2008.
Exactly, yes. They haven't recovered. So all that points to the fact that we have to look inwards to generate resources. But in order to generate resources, the economy has to be vibrant. There has to be jobs for people to pay as you earn, you know, for people to consume so that the economy is moving. And I think that's where we need to put our attention. How do we make the economy move? How do we create jobs? Because when you look at the debate today, I've been looking at the newspapers, the economy, they say there is a youth fund, youth livelihood fund to help the youth get jobs. But where are they going to get them? Unless we look at
create their own jobs. The Youth Livelihood Fund is supposed to enable young people create their own jobs. The government decided to branch it out and create a women's fund to also help women be job creators instead of job seekers, because you can't have you can't have all these people
waiting. We are waiting for the men's
fund. It's coming, don't worry. But you see, I wanted to go back to what Onas talked about marketing. Let us make the marketing right. Where are we selling our products? And when we talk about marketing, we look at markets, domestic markets. We look at the regional market. We look at the global market. Because, for example, just last month, our government signed the Continental Free Trade Area. That's supposed to open up the African market, you know, to our products. But when you look at Uganda, what products are we going to sell there? And the danger there is that if you don't know you don't have any products to sell, you become a market for others, a supermarket for others. And that's more losses. So for me, I think when we are talking about marketing, we need to look at, for example, the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives. When you look at the budget today, that whole ministry is getting 0.4% of the budget. Yet it's a ministry which, when we're talking about marketing, they are the ones in charge of marketing. They are the ones in charge of standards, UNBS. They are the ones you talked about research. The gentleman talked about innovations and research. The Uganda Industrial Research Institutions is under the ministry, you know. All that is under that ministry, but it's getting 0.4%.
What would have been ideal? You discouraged us from looking at percentages at the beginning of the show. And I'm wondering why a percentage now becomes important to a department of government. If it made things happen, that 0.4% could turn out something.
But what has the Ministry of Trade done happening? What is happening there when we have no markets? When UNBS, because just recently in the EU market we had to impose a self-ban because we couldn't achieve the EU standards, you know. So UNBS needs more money there. We have had rejections of our maize even within the region because the maize is very poor. It has aflatoxins, you know. So when we talk about percentages, it's also important because we are looking at a cake. When you are cutting a cake, the percentages are clear. So for me, I think if we need a clear direction as a country. That
wasn't that clear direction articulated during the Manifesto Accountability Week that's just ended? Because that's what I would have expected at a minimum, that if you're doing accountability, you're showcasing what you have achieved over the last over the last 1 year, and to tell that we are almost midway our term of office. This is how far we have gone. By government's admission, it has covered 38%. It expects that within the next the remaining period,
80%.
the 40% really. If they are 38 now, 60% to go. It will have been covered.
Okay. You know,
if you relate that with Kenya, Kenya made a promise to the next election, which will be 2022. Yes, 2022. And President Uhuru Kenyatta talks about his big four, and those big four are. He's talking about manufacturing jobs. He says he's concentrating on manufacturing jobs, manufacturing as a sector. He's concentrating on universal health care, and has promised that by 2022, universal health care should be at 100% in Kenya. He's talking about affordable housing. He's talking about food security. But you know, Kenya has had issues with food security for parts of the country that have been devastated by the elements of weather. Affordable housing is a challenge across the region, not just in Kenya, but in Uganda, all over the region. Manufacturing jobs, we're still exporting a lot of unprocessed, though Kenya is a bit of a leg ahead of the rest of the region. How do these governments, looking at their promises over a 5-year period, a 5-year cycle, which is the election cycle for all these countries, tell people that actually they are driving these economies to where they want to go? I attended an event, a high-level policy dialogue on the budget organized by Accord and the State of the Nation discussion platform during the week. And speaker after speaker was saying this thing called arriving at middle income status by 2020 should be removed from government communication, because the reality looks like it's something unlikely to be achieved. Professor Ezra Suruma did give a presentation, actually spoke from the audience, and he said, what is there planning? Is there a deficit? If there is a minimum of planning, it actually doesn't reflect on what people are doing. So if you look across the region, is anybody moving in a direction that promises to deliver them anywhere? It's a very long question, yes.
Take us that long question. I thought I should first give my view on the other two elements you raised. One was on taxation, and one was on I think you talked of regional trade, kind of. Yes. Look, on taxation, I think it's a no-brainer to argue that we don't need to tax, because in a healthy economy, historically, I think right from the Bible, tax has its place in society. I think the real debate in Uganda is the tax equitable? Is everyone carrying their fair share of taxation? And that's where the crisis, I mean, tax to GDP ratio is so low, to me essential, because the base is so narrow. The usual suspects are the ones who are being taxed. And the government's effort to raise more revenue is trying to say, dig deeper, not dig wider. You know? So until when we address and even let the citizens appreciate that everyone must carry their share of the burden, it doesn't make sense in my view to say you want to provide free X to every citizen, free Y service, and you don't want to touch the issue of whether they too should contribute to the taxes. The abolition of some of the old taxes which are being demonized was of course political, but it was not serious. You know? There must be a way in which every citizen must carry the burden of taxation.
Equitably.
But they will only willingly and happily carry that burden if you also answer the long-standing question whether the taxes are going to the right purpose. So it's egg and chicken. How do you first make people appreciate taxation? Or do you first make them appreciate taxation and they pay verbally or you show them the benefit of taxation
and
then they accept.
Motivate them to pay?
Well, of course, government would just say we can't show them the benefits if they are not paying the tax. Then they can also say we can't pay if we have not seen. So something has to give in.
Jen, I'm afraid we need to take a break.
Okay.
I need to read out these two messages, and then you chew on my very long question before we come out to the and then answer it.
But you cut me short on the regional.
You will pick it up after the break. But let me take a message from Nteja Sim again. He says, Madam Jane, aren't you sounding contradictory when you advocate for more money for ministries and at the same time talking about creating jobs and empowering citizens to consume, which increases taxes or the tax base? Isn't it time to talk about cutting on public administration while increasing productivity?
Absolutely.
And I'll take this message also from Joe Osia in Ntinda, who says the greatest blunder of the East African economies is to pursue the East African community with more sentimentality than strategic intent. The DRC is the richest country in the world with an 80 million strong market, which is more than half the combined population of the East African community, and there is no strategic positioning to enhance economic integration with the DRC. The cheapest route to the sea for Ugandan oil is not through a southeastern bound pipeline, but through a western bound multimodal system in Kinshasa. Renewable energy can be harnessed and delivered to Uganda at less than 30% of the current end user price using infrastructure on River Congo, etc. etc. May God give our leaders some wisdom. Joe Osia in Ntinda. Let's take a break. When we come back, I'll take
people like Joe have ideas but have no
pick
power.
a message after the break and we'll continue the discussion. Have the guests answer the question. Welcome back to this last segment of tonight's Fourth Estate, and we're discussing East African economies. Is the region focused in the right direction? That is the big question. I don't know if you're getting the answers or giving the answers for that. And Musa Ladu is also watching us and says, Charles, Jane didn't say percentages are not important. She said it doesn't tell the whole story. And I agree with her. Sorry, if you agree with her, with you. But Nteja Simwe, Joe Sia, and my long question. Yeah, Ona wanted to complete.
Yeah, before Jane comes in on the trade, I totally agree with the Joe Sia. I think there is ample evidence that the bulk of our export revenue is coming from within the region. And countries like DRC, which are sort of the forgotten one of Africa, offer among the biggest opportunities, even with all the complexities of insecurity and, of course, South Sudan, we know. The biggest trade that involved the ordinary person ever, perhaps in Uganda's independence history, was between Uganda and South Sudan before the current conflict broke out. That's when ordinary Ugandans could go up to Juba with the cattle and the South Sudanese who are coming to buy chicken and buy goats. I mean, that is, forget about the East African community.
They're buying pineapple gardens in the world.
I mean, ordinary people were involved and they drove. You saw the volume of trade that was being recorded. And when that conflict broke out, how it actually upset the Ugandan economy. But the people at the center of it were ordinary Ugandans. It was not even big companies. So if you had the same happening with the countries like DRC, and I think one of the biggest challenges for DRC, in addition to the politics, is the infrastructure. While we need the standard gauge railway, perhaps you need faster even a good road that could get to Kinshasa somehow. You know, so those would be some of the biggest. You don't have to. But this talk of exporting to Europe, there is no evidence that it's benefiting a lot the economy.
For a moment, and I pick up on this question that on this very good example that Ona is raising. The biggest trade opportunities with South Sudan fell because of the entrepreneurship of Ugandans and their risk-taking appetite, which is fairly high. Global reports have indicated. The question is, how does government tap into this? Because government, you deploy Ugandan soldiers into South Sudan to help stabilize that country. You dedicate decades of support for the independence of South Sudan, and when it finally happens, there is no mechanism to tap into trade opportunities that exist in that economy. That you have Ugandans riding on a border all the way from Kampala up to Juba to do business, women setting up kiosks and running business on their own, and when things blow up, you only have a bailout list before Parliament. The same questions are being raised about Uganda's involvement in the strategic thinking about involvement in conflicts like the one in Somalia, where I've now been for since 2007. 2018, that means we've been there for the last 11 years. Interventions, I'm told we have some phone calls, but let me pick one or two and then we'll come back and answer the questions. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, how are you?
Good, sir. How are you doing?
Fine, fine. I'm Mokorde Kahara calling from Mushenyi.
Yes, Kahara, go ahead.
And I want to make a contribution.
Please go ahead.
Because that area is very, very critical.
Sure.
And it would have been better if actually your panel had also been incorporated somebody from World Bank.
Okay.
And somebody from Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning, that is from government side. Because when you look at actually the nature of our East African economy, like my brother Nakito has contributed, if you are to make a gain to be competitive, we should not ignore the DRC market.
Yes.
Because when we are looking at this East African community, we should need to consider even these neighboring regions, the SADC, the West African countries. But today, as I talk, if you are connected to West Africa, you have to jump on a flight from Entebbe through Addis Ababa, and then you have to connect again to Lagos or Abuja. And that doesn't make sense. Another issue is actually on taxation. Like on taxation, they have said when you look at the East African community, we still have a narrow tax base. And the reason being that our people are still poor. The purchasing power is not there. Yet, our focus now is to attract investors from India, from China. Now, when they bring investments here, who will purchase their commodity? And therefore, there is that kind of a gap. Another issue I had wanted to raise finally is on the issue of what is the commonality of our economy? Our commonality is on agriculture. If it is actually our commonality is on agriculture, what percentage of our budget is going to agriculture? And number two, do we have an agriculture policy? If we have a policy on agriculture, it should be very clear. But when you look at the state of, I don't want to look into what is going on in government, what is going on in the agriculture sector. But in other economies, which model are we borrowing? Are we borrowing how China went into green revolution, or India went into, which model are we borrowing? In those countries in Asia, how they managed to succeed was to have an agriculture policy that had one critical area, agriculture marketing. Number two, agriculture mechanization. Number three, agriculture credit. They established rural banks that were borrowing money at all interest rates. But when you look at our country, do we have our farmers, where do they borrow money? They borrow money from commercial banks. How much interest are they? They are paying higher interest rates. So we must have a strong policy. So that's my contribution.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kahara. And the things Kahara talks about, you would put them right on the tourism policy, if you have a tourism policy. Hello? 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 Can you turn down the volume on your TV set and talk to us, because we can hear you. Hello?
Hello.
Yes, sir?
Yes, how are you?
Good, sir. How are you doing? Your name and where you're calling from?
Yeah, this is Ambe.
Yes?
Yes. I've had the issue about the economy, about the market, about all that. I'm calling from Nadia.
Yes, please.
Yes. I think the most important thing we have to do is we have to scan our environment. The issue is we have got very good climate, but we are not taking advantage of the two seasons we have. Now we are crying about Kenya, we are crying about Sudan, we are crying, yes, all those are potential markets. If you look at the Serot factory, Peter talked about it, have we organized the infrastructure? Are the farmers ready to supply the Serot factory? No, they are not. Because the next thing they are going to do, they are going to say the factory has closed down because we don't have products. Apple was being produced. But if you look at the uptake of Uganda breweries and Nile breweries alone, there must be a pull factor. Because the demand has to be high. And when the demand is high, is the structure there? Are the farmers being mobilized that every week is the amount of sorghum that Uganda breweries and Nile breweries want? And what are the structures down there? Are the farmers ready to bank and deliver at the right time, at the right moment? All those things are not there. We are ever crying to government. Let's stop blaming government for everything. If I asked, what have you done, you Charles there? What have you done, me alone? Because we shall cry for government, we shall complain, we shall want interest rates. We have to cut interest rates. Look at how Ethiopia is organizing their infrastructure. The roads are very clear. Anytime they are delivering. The story you've just given about the tomato farmer, he should be able to store his tomatoes for at least 3 to 4 months. We are still selling grain to Kenya instead of selling products to Kenya. We sell posho, we sell maize bran, we sell corn oil, but we are selling a whole grain. Then Kenya sells us back the
flour.
The flour and animal feed. What is that? Why don't we sell them products of meat?
Isn't that where government comes in? Don't you think that is exactly where government comes in? Because my farmer
doesn't want government to
yes, my farmer has produced the tomatoes expensively because he has to buy pesticides and stuff and pay workers and harvest those tomatoes. Where does he put them? He can't have a cold room in his. Every small farmer cannot have their own cold room, can they?
And I think let farmers do what they are supposed to do, yes, and the government do what they are supposed to do.
Hello?
Okay.
Hello? 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 That caller is still listening to their TV. If you could turn down the volume on your TV set and talk to us. Hello? 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 I think we're losing that one as well. Hello? Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, this is Martin from Kansanga.
Yes, Martin. Keep it brief, please.
So thank you for the nice program.
Sure. Welcome.
Yeah, and we are talking about, someone has talked about Ugandan farmers sending flour to Kenya and maize, and again Kenya sends us back the flour. But let me tell you, if we had some good government ways, we wouldn't be having any need of us selling our flour or like selling our maize to Kenya. We would be producing each and everything here from Uganda, and after producing all those stuff from Uganda, we would be selling them the flour. But since we have...
Oh, I think we lost Martin. Sorry, Martin. We lost you. Let me take a message from Bernard Impero from Lubaga, who says, Honor brings out a very important issue of Ugandans moving South Sudan with any quantity they can afford to sell. I was sometime back, part of them. The impact of the profits on these Ugandans back home was much evident. If such trend of trade could happen in the rest of the member states involving the lowest traders, I think the East African community would benefit. Let's come back here, lady and gentlemen. I asked a very long question, which hasn't been given an answer yet, and you've listened to the viewers, and the phone is still ringing.
And I think the answer to the question is, how do governments respond to the dynamics of especially the ordinary person? This East African community, common market, customs union, they have remained largely a leaders' club. I mean, there's a lot of government bureaucracy still running it. The idea of open borders is envisaged in the common market, but it remains largely on paper. there is a lot of capacity by the East Africans to drive the economy, the ordinary trader, the ordinary farmer, if he was free to find opportunities within the region, on a truck, on a border, because the paperwork required to export and what the checks are frustrating. And that's one of the solutions that South Sudan was a typical example. And it showed us how much the ordinary people can actually drive the East African economy.
You know, Anna, talking about that, I always get surprised flying from, moving from this country into any of the capitals of East Africa, and at immigration, they're asking you a question, how many days are you staying?
Yes.
It just baffles me, because one, even for tourism, but if I carry a passport from a member state of the East African community, how do you ask me how many days I'm staying in your country? I mean, what? It's I just can't understand. And I've been wondering what to answer in this integration business. Jane, you have the you have the microphone, because we should be ending the show in a few minutes.
Okay.
There are many issues you have to respond
to.
There
are a number of issues, but I think what's really important is the issue about that if I'm asking for more resources for the ministries, it isn't good, because we should be looking at production and productivity. And my response to that really is that a government has to play a role in all these issues we are talking about. The challenges facing the agriculture sector, challenges of mechanization, challenges of markets, challenges of the cold storage. And we are demanding too much from the small-scale farmers. They produce, but somebody tells them, you have to keep those tomatoes for so many months until you get a market, you know. And this is where government comes in. Because when I talked about the Ministry of Trade, when we talk about markets, markets are negotiated. You look for the market. Even the domestic market is negotiated.
Can I flip that question just a little bit? Look at our screen there. We framed the question, which economy in the region seems to be doing the things that you are demanding that we should have our governments doing? Because they have laid down their plans. We have referred to those plans. They are giving accountability. They have laid down their budgets for 2018-2019. If we looked at that, do you think they're actually responsive?
Yeah, because let me take an example of Rwanda. Because Rwanda, for example, they have earmarked their niche as tourism. They have marked their niche as ICT, to be an ICT hub. You look at their budget. You look at all the activities they are doing there, going towards that direction. You look at a country like Tanzania. Tanzania is looking at expanding their ports, Bagamoyo and Dar es Salaam. And when you look at even the negotiations they did with Uganda, so that our pipe passes there, you are looking at the crude oil pipe. Tanzania is also looking at revamping their mining sector, the gas and the minerals. And when you are looking at, they have put in a lot of effort in reviving and resigning the contracts, the mining contracts. They have used the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, because there is the Africa Mining Vision, to be able to help them to put laws and policies and regulations in place so that Tanzania benefits from the mining sector. So what I'm looking at for Uganda, if we say this is where I want to go, you know, because when you look at even today, the title for the budget for 2018-19 was industrialization for job creation and blah, blah, blah. But you put 0.4% in the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Tourism, you know. And when I say put more money in the Ministry of Trade, and you say you don't want money there, the standards, even for somebody to know that even on...
I think that kind of doubts where a man should be there is arising out of the evidence that man has been put in places, but it has delivered nothing. So I think some people are asking, should we continue using the current approach to deliver the results? Is giving money to ministries the right solution?
So what's the
Because
alternative?
Even the little they have been getting. And you know, you need to go to government offices. They themselves are lamenting.
Isn't that the question we should be asking? Because if you have experimented with all these things, you have said the right things. Where does someone turn back?
Then what are the alternatives?
Because Tom Jana is watching us from Fort Portal, and he says economic growth, GDP, and income per capita figures are superficial. The emphasis should be on mainstreaming economic development, i.e. the Human Development Index at house and community level.
Agreed. That's true. That's true.
Jane and Ona, unfortunately, time runs so fast. We need to get out of here. Time is out. If you could just close your argument, Jane, and then I'll come to Ona to also close, and we'll get out of here.
My closing argument is that we need a strong economy. We need to put certain things in place. If we are to talk about job creation, if we are talking about moving into the middle economy, not in 2020, but even wherever we get it, but we need to move systematically. That if we are to create jobs, how do we create jobs? How do we link up agriculture? How do we do, and I agree with Ona here, that we need to start from the marketing side. Because even when you look at our agriculture, it's agriculture of affection. Where I grow a tomato today, a young tomato which is round, another one which is pointed, a bean which is yellow, another one which is brown. You know, we can't look at the economy, real economy, when we are looking at such, you know, agriculture.
And
so we need to be...
People are experimenting. They're trying on their own. One day, when I was talking about, one day someone is trying direct cattle, another day they are thinking...
Then you say moringa, then you say what?
Another day they try something else.
I think we need to move from there, and government has a role to play in that. And that's why we are taxpayers. That's why we pay our taxes. And for me, I don't believe in this business of saying that we are lamenting government here to Yambe. Government is there to do certain things for the citizen. If I'm a taxpayer and I say government, I need markets, you know, then I'm not lamenting. I'm making a demand to government. And government has a role to do that.
And responsibility.
Exactly.
We need
My
to be getting out of
conclusion is just the opposite. Oh, just a supplement. Government has a role, but we need to reduce the role of government to supervision and create another mechanism for execution. I think the crisis right now is the expectations from government is that there has been a fusion of policy making and execution, and government is only excellent as policy making, it's not executing. There must be another layer of execution, which inherently should be done by private contractors who are supervised by government through their elected institutions.
I'll tell you thank you very much, Ona. I'll tell you my frustration with government is that sometimes in certain aspects, in very many aspects, especially if you're people like the people seated on this table, you don't get health care from government, you don't get even security. You have to supplement it. Everything has to be supplemented, which is subsidizing government. It almost acts like an absentee landlord who only collects rent, doesn't give back. But Joe Osia, this message is a bit long, so let me struggle and take parts of it. Airline business is very complex. It's unique in the sense that it can be successfully shifted to the center of both extremities of an integrated value chain, but can never exist as a commercially viable standalone, as say commodity trading. It can run your balance sheet losses, yet reap net inflow positives in terms of associated branding and national exposure, which boast investor appeal and confidence, etc. The business case for Uganda as floated for the revival of the Uganda Airlines is dead at conception. KQ alone can and shall run it into the ground in under 18 months, which is a conservative estimate. Government subsidies notwithstanding. At whichever point you place it in any integrated value chain, there is just no sight of spin-off leverage to offset the losses unless it piggybacks on mature airlines for alliances Worse still, the timing for market, they couldn't be worse, with the primary target, so-called emerging middle class, under distress, highly price sensitive, and without an iota of brand loyalty, in my humble opinion. It's just another black hole. Well, if you listen to Amos Wekesa, who is very passionate about promoting tourism, he would tell you that if this country were able only to attract 3 million tourists, spending $1,000 in this economy would be fundamentally different in a very, very short period of time. Problem is, entries at Entebbe International Airport, they still record every passenger who goes through or into the airport, and we're recording 1.5 million passengers annually now, which is a significant spike. But that includes Onapito, who is not a tourist, myself, Jen, who are not tourists, are captured in this statistic. Our time is out. We need to get out of here. Thank you very much, Jen, for making time for the show. Thank you very much, Onapito.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, viewers.
Thank you very much to all our viewers for joining us tonight. And always, my apologies. The phone is still ringing up to now. It's been ringing off the hook. We're unable to take all the phone calls, but the debate continues on our social media platforms, on Twitter and on Facebook. And of course, for those of you who are using WhatsApp, the debate continues. From me, it's a good night.